Hey, Dragon Slayers. Right now, my blood sugar is 99. It's about 4 hours or so after my last meal. So, today's video is all about how insulin resistance is often the root cause of kidney disease. So, I've linked two articles in the description below. The first one is pretty interesting. It was published by Stanford University. And it talks about how 30 years ago, Stanford's Gerald Reaven, he's a doctor there, often referred to as the father of insulin resistance. He hypothesized that the inability of the body to process insulin normally led to type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease. He also thought that certain medical conditions that increase the risk for heart disease, such as high triglycerides, high blood pressure, and elevated blood sugar, were caused by the inability of insulin to do its job, or insulin resistance. He referred to this condition as Syndrome X, which later became known as metabolic syndrome. So the kidneys remove waste. They help regulate blood pressure, in part controlling sodium levels in the blood, balancing fluids, and directing the production of red blood cells. Reaven believed that they were not directly influenced by insulin resistance. Using mouse models, however, later on, they were able to prove that it showed that kidneys continue to process glucose normally, but the regulation of sodium is affected. They found that, surprisingly, the kidneys continue to respond to insulin cues to process glucose, even as every other cell in the body and all the other organs stop heeding the call to gobble up glucose. But on the other hand, the same kidney was less responsive and therefore partially resistant to insulin's signal to that organ so that it should absorb sodium. This lowered the levels of sodium in the blood. Missteps in sodium regulation can lead to high blood pressure. There's another link. So, insulin resistance contributes to metabolic syndrome, which is associated with the development of kidney disease. I found this really fascinating. So, the guy that first hypothesized about insulin resistance affecting all these other functions in the body, he didn't think that it affected the kidneys in any direct manner. Now we know that it does. The second article is a research article that talks about how insulin resistance is an early metabolic alteration in chronic kidney disease patients. They say that it's almost universal in those who reach end stage kidney failure. The skeletal muscle represents the primary site of insulin resistance in chronic kidney disease. The etymology, which means origin, of insulin resistance in kidney disease is multifactorial, meaning coming from many factors, in nature and may be secondary to disturbances that are prominent in renal disease, renal meaning kidneys. These include physical inactivity, chronic inflammation, oxidative stress, vitamin D deficiency, metabolic acidosis, anemia, adipokine derangement, and altered gut microbiome. So these are all things that contribute to kidney disease. And at the core of it is insulin resistance. Insulin resistance contributes to the progression of renal, which means kidney, disease by worsening renal hemodynamics by various mechanisms, including activation of the sympathetic nervous system, sodium retention, and downregulating of peptide systems. So, insulin resistance has been solidly associated with intermediate mechanisms leading to cardiovascular disease and chronic kidney disease, including left ventricular hypertrophy, so that's the enlarging of the left side of your heart muscle, vascular dysfunction, dysfunction in your veins, and atherosclerosis, also vein issues. So, insulin, is hormoned by your pancreas beta cells. They talk about how it can be reduced when you pump out too much or hyperinsulinemia over time, it causes insulin resistance. So there you have it, guys. I mean, it's pretty plain to see that insulin resistance is terrible and it can cause a whole slew of problems. Another one on that long list is chronic kidney disease and ultimately kidney failure. So that's what I've got for you guys today. Remember that together, you and I will slay the dreaded diabetes dragon as well as chronic kidney disease.